My number one area going into the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season was Cancun, Mexico, impacted by Cristobal, Gamma, Delta, and Zeta. The majority of the landfalls during the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season occurred in the Gulf of Mexico. But will it be that way this year? Where is the attention going to be focused? We had a whopping 30 named storms in 2020. This past season saw the most landfalls of all the active seasons going back to 1933. In fact, 64% of all the cities in the Hurricane City database had tropical storm force winds or greater. This year, I'm calling for 20 to 24 named storms, which is higher than what most of the experts are predicting. The reason these predictions have been so successful over the years is because it's picking points on a map. The more you narrow it down to street level, the more data that is available. Probably the most important of the 8 criteria is the North Atlantic Oscillation. I've been adding this in with my predictions over the past several years, and it's really helped to narrow it down. This year, all indications are we're going to have above average pressures for the North Atlantic Oscillation. The cities are calculated to figure out which areas get impacted the most in above average pressure seasons. So what I do every year before the hurricane season starts is create this graph which takes the top 20 that I've chosen based on a bunch of number crunching. Once the top 20 are listed, they start to compete against one another using the 8 criteria at the top of the chart. Whoever wins the most columns wins, which is Wilmington, North Carolina. They are number 1. They have 3 of the 8 criteria that they've won. In fact, the most important, the North Atlantic Oscillation. 41% of all times that they've been impacted has been an above average pressure NAO season. So without further ado, here is my top 20 cities and islands to be impacted by 40 mile per hour winds or greater during the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. As I always say going into the hurricane season, if you're in my top 5, batten down the hatches. Act as though you're going to get hit by a hurricane this year. It may not happen. In fact, usually not all the top 5 are impacted. In fact, sometimes it's only one, but it usually is a really hard hit in one of the top 5. A couple of years, none of the top 5 got impacted, but it usually happens. In fact, it could very well happen to the remainder of the top 20. Or your city may not even be in the top 20 and you can get hit very hard during the hurricane season. Look at last year, for example. Principalca, Nicaragua, central Nicaragua, that's one of the least impacted areas in the entire Atlantic Basin, and they were hit by hurricanes Iota and Eta, which were borderline Category 5s. Also, what I like to do every year is pick out a track or tracks that I think will happen during the course of the hurricane season. And it's impossible to really do this, but I like to match them up with my numbers on the map. And this is the track that concerns me the most for the 2021 hurricane season, especially in the Big Bend, Florida area, north of Tampa, maybe including Tampa. Remember in 2005 when I mentioned the potential for a major hurricane in the northern Gulf killing many people. I talked about Mississippi getting pounded and New Orleans being just to the left. Well, this year I'm talking about the Big Bend, Florida area and Tampa being just to the right, which would get the bulk of the storm surge. I'm very concerned about a system in the eastern Gulf this year and coming up through the Caribbean, hitting a lot of these areas like the Cayman Islands that have been spared the last several years. Last year they got a couple of impacts, but not major. Jamaica, you're way overdue as well. I'm concerned about Jamaica, the Western Caribbean, and the northeastern Gulf of Mexico for this hurricane season. But again, you're going to have more tracks than this. There's a lot of possibilities out there. Even though I don't have a heavy leaning for the Western Gulf of Mexico this year, does not mean that you're off the hook by any stretch. It can happen. I could be completely wrong. Everybody needs to be equally ready going into this hurricane season because it will be busy, and I can pretty much bet that's going to happen. To keep this video rather condensed, I know I breezed through the top 20 rather quickly. You can go to hurricanecity.com/predictions to get all the details, including a detailed blog on how I arrive at the conclusions of my city predictions with maps and everything else that you would need to dissect this a little further. You can also see all of my years of predictions going all the way back to 2003. About 85% of them, at least one or more of the top 5 were impacted. Please, everyone, be prepared for the upcoming hurricane season. Be safe this year. Please spread the word. I'm Jim Williams, Hurricane City. You can follow me on Twitter. We'll see you during the season with hurricane coverage as hurricanes hit land. Thank you for watching.